Hi, my name is Nora Sanders, and I am a target teacher at Davis Elementary in Cobb County, Georgia. For my professional learning goal this year, I decided to read some professional development books and then post some videos with my reviews and takeaways from what I've read. So this time I decided to read the Time Magazine Special Edition, The Science of Creativity. It's technically not a book, but I was feeling rebellious, so I figured it'd be okay. It was amazing. I had this recommended to me by several of my colleagues, and I was a little hesitant because I wasn't sure if I would get that many takeaways from it or if it would just be really interesting, and it turned out to be both. So it has several sections to it. There's the creative animal, the creative mind, creativity in action, and creativity at any age. There's the table of contents. I loved reading about the neuroscience, the brain research that has recently come out. I found it really interesting. I'm not going to be sharing a lot of that because I didn't really get as many practical ideas from my classroom from that. But one of them that I did think was really cool was they were talking about right the instant before you have an insight that you're less aware of your environment. And so this is the reason that many people do their best thinking in the shower. It's basically like a sensory deprivation chamber. He said there's sensory restriction, white noise, and you can't really see much. So I thought that was interesting. I'm one of those people that has my best ideas in the shower. There's another section that I really loved called Learning from Leonardo. And we actually do a first grade unit about Leonardo da Vinci, and it's amazing. He's such an inspiring person, and just to read about how creative he was in such a wide variety of fields, like humanities and art and science, and just such an amazing creative genius. So reading about him, always inspires me. But what was really cool about this is that they kind of shared like things you can learn from Da Vinci and from his life and from how he worked. So they have just kind of some different sections, like be relentlessly curious, seek knowledge for its own sake. So I thought that would be fun to kind of maybe work into the Da Vinci unit, like talk about, at the end, maybe do a wrap up with some lessons that we've learned from him. Some of the most powerful ones that I really liked that I thought would be good for the classroom, go down rabbit holes. And it talks about how he just filled his notebook with like 169 attempts to square a circle. And he listed 67 words that describe different types of moving water. And I love the end of this. It said he drilled down for the pure joy of geeking out. And then the next one kind of relates, talks about gets distracted. And that he teaches us the value of being focused on things that fascinate us, but just sometimes getting distracted and pursuing whatever shiny new idea you happen to stumble upon. And just reading that kind of made me think about, the complaint that, we teachers have just about every day. There's just not enough time. There's not enough time to geek out and go down these rabbit holes and get distracted. But I think, for creativity's sake, I think, certainly for me, I need to make time for my students for us to kind of go off on those tangents sometimes. And then I also like this one, procrastinating. And it says procrastinating like Leonardo requires work. It involves gathering all possible facts and ideas and then allowing the collection to simmer. And I think that's another, going back to that time issue, that we do all this research and we do all this facts, and it's like, okay, now go. Now we have to make our product. But it is so important sometimes to just take a break, let those ideas simmer. And some of the brain research at the beginning of the magazine really backed that up as well. The next section was called Under the Hood of Creativity. And I had just the best takeaway from this one because it says, how the brain bends, breaks, and blends existing concepts and objects to invent bold new forms. And so in Target, we do, it's called F2OE. It's fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration is the components of creativity. And this kind of has some different components of bending, breaking, and blending. And I love that. And I think, F2OE is great, and I certainly will continue to teach it, but I think maybe for the older kids who have heard about F2OE for years and years, I love this idea of bend, break, and blend. And so bending is modifying or twisting out of shape the original. And it uses an example of the problem of windshields being solved because they needed to create windshields that were glare resistant. And so they shrank the crystals. And so shrinking or changing size is one way of bending. And then the next one is breaking, where something whole is taken apart and something new is assembled out of the fragments. And so it talks about Picasso, who's another creative genius that we do a unit on, and how he broke apart the visual plane into a jigsaw puzzle of angles and perspectives when he developed Cubism. And then for the last one, which is blending, is when the brain combines two or more sources in novel ways. And it talks about scientists coming up with, this was crazy, Freckles the goat, and she's actually Freckles the spider goat, and she is a goat who secretes spider silk in her milk because they came up with a way to splice the DNA. So I was just thinking about maybe like doing a lesson on that or coming up with some kind of visual in my classroom. This magazine has really amazing pictures throughout. So just coming up with something for bending, breaking, and blending, and maybe teaching that to the older kids, maybe with the Ignite unit or something like that. I just thought that was really cool. And then it has another section called the 7 Secrets. And it talks about the power of letting your mind wander, but then also honing in, and how like mindfulness and meditation can really help with that. And we were actually talking about this at one of our gifted meetings at the beginning of the year, and we were talking about how like it can be so powerful to just have a mindfulness moment right before you do something creative, because it just kind of, you know, lets you free of whatever else you're worrying about, whatever else you're thinking about, and kind of gives you that headspace to be able to be creative. So I've been doing that with my students before we do something creative this year, and I think it's really helped. So I'm going to continue to do that, and this kind of backs that up a little bit. Oh, and this was one of my favorites. This is kind of a cool lesson idea. So it talks about this creator. His name was Philip Stark. I hope I'm saying that right. And he developed the Juicy Safe in a restaurant while he was eating squid. And this is it right here. It's beautifully designed, but it doesn't work. And so what's cool about it is he developed it based on the shape of a squid, because he squeezed a lemon over a squid, and then he decided to, you know, make this new tool for squeezing lemons. It's on permanent display in a museum now, and the article was talking about how it doesn't really matter that it doesn't work, because the form of it was just so beautiful, and so now it's a piece of art. And so I was thinking about, you know, kind of maybe sharing that story, and then having students make something that doesn't work. Like say, okay, we're going to design a can opener that doesn't work, or design a car that doesn't drive. And maybe like a good prompt for that would be, it doesn't work, but it's pretty. Or it doesn't work, but it's shiny. I don't know. I think they would really love that. And then there's kind of another story that has sort of some subversiveness to it. This was a design icon that made the Well-Tempered chair. His name is Ron Arid, and it makes the sitter ill-tempered because it's made from sheets of steel and is too uncomfortable to sit on. So it's basically a chair that you wouldn't want to sit on. So I love that idea, and it kind of reminds me of, in my first book review, I talked about reverse brainstorming, and so I think this would be really cool to do as like a reverse STEM lesson. I think they would really love that, so I'm going to plan that pretty soon. There's another great section at the end, the science of creativity in schools, and it just talks about the importance of creativity, and maybe some things that schools are doing right, and maybe some things that we need to work on. For me, I just thought, you know, when I thought about the school that I'm at, I thought we're doing a lot of things right, so many things right. And, you know, I think all of Cobb County is doing things right. As far as STEM and just a lot of the other pushes that we've had to encourage creativity in the classroom. So a lot of it was just kind of reinforcing some things that we already knew. So I'm not going to touch on that a lot, but it was an interesting chapter. The whole magazine was really interesting. There was another section for parents about ways that they can encourage creativity at home, and I think that would be really great to share with some of the parents of my students, because I get that question a lot. Another fun section at the end was the science of creativity, eureka moments, and just kind of how things were discovered in new and unusual ways you wouldn't think about. I know a lot of us have heard the story about Velcro with the burrs that got stuck to the guy's pants when he was out on a hike, and talks about the microwave and the invention of TV. So that would be interesting to kind of share with the students. Like, you never know when you're going to have a great idea. I'm going to end by sharing this fun picture. So this is George Bernard Shaw, and I didn't realize that he had this, but he had this garden shed that he converted into his workspace. And what I think is kind of funny about this is you keep hearing now about, there's shows about converting sheds, like the She Shed, or putting a tiny house in your backyard to work in, but he did it first. So I just thought that was cool. So the Science of Creativity Times Special Edition, I loved it. Especially for teachers. I think it's just an amazing way to kind of spark your own creative thinking about things you can do in your classroom. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to borrow the magazine, I'd be happy to send it to you. And thanks for watching.